Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I thought you were getting up to leave. I'm very thrilled that you sat back down. Brother Jack, thank you so very much. I love this church. It's easy to love. First of all, you got a dynamic spirit. God has blessed this congregation, not just for Dallas and the Metroplex, but this church literally touches America and the world every single day and week. What a dynamic congregation that God has blessed. Of course, I'm convinced that part of it is most of your staff have Arkansas connections. I think that's why it's so extraordinary. Mike Buster, who is an Arkansas guy, and of course your pastor born there. Rick Briscoe is a Little Rock guy. A lot of connections. And so there's a good reason to think that the Lord would bless this great congregation, Jack, and you're... But you know, quite frankly, and I say this with all the heart I have, Prestonwood is truly renowned across this country as one of the great churches of America. And your pastor is unquestionably seen as one of the truly great pastors and leaders of God's movement in this nation. And I'm just honored to be in the same building with him. Thank you. I'm going to surprise you today because I'm not here to talk about politics. That'll make some of you disappointed. It'll thrill most of you. But the reason is because I want to share really more of a message from my heart than about just politics. And I know that sometimes when people like me come to a church, the expectation is, okay, he's going to use this to politicize us. And I want to assure you I'm not. And I have to say that oftentimes because people expect it. And I want to sort of distance myself from ever making the pulpit a place where I would try to somehow take advantage of it in that way. And frankly, oftentimes in my political life, there have been times I've had to sort of deal with this. When I first ran for office, you can imagine there were people who didn't think people like me should run for office at all. And in Malvern, Arkansas, a little town just south of Little Rock and north of my hometown of Hope, I'll recall that there was a lady who came up to me during Brick Fest, which is the festival at which they celebrate Malvern. They celebrate bricks there. That'll tell you how small a town it is, okay? And she came up to me and she says, I just want you to know that I, too, am a Baptist. But, and as soon as she said that, I knew to brace myself because she was going to unload on me. And she did. She said, I don't think people like you ought to get involved in politics. And I've never voted for you. And I'm not going to vote for you. Sir, I wouldn't vote for you if you were St. Peter. And I said, lady, that's fine, because if I were St. Peter, you wouldn't be in my district. So, I know some of you think that's rather unkind. I'd already marked her down as an undecided voter. It really didn't matter to me at all. During my tenure as governor, I got to do some wonderful things and had some great experiences, met some incredible people. I also occasionally was roped into doing something that was anything but wonderful. When Mike Leavitt was the governor of Utah, he invited me to come one weekend to spend with him and a couple of other governors in a conference that he was hosting. It was February of 2001, which was exactly a year before the Winter Olympics, which would be held in February of 2002. So we all went out to the conference and did our thing on Friday night and participated in a panel that he had. And at the end of it, he got up and he said, now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know that tomorrow we have a special treat for all of you who are attending the conference. We going to get in buses. We're going out to Olympic Village, where the Olympics will be held a year from now. It's all built. The athletes are out there in training. You're going to get to see firsthand and before the rest of the world what Olympic Village is all about. And you'll be treated to the governor's bobsled competition. And I thought, that'll be interesting. They'll name bobsleds after each of the governors, and we'll watch them. And he continued to describe this event, and as he did, it sounded a lot like to me that he was describing that the governors would be in the bobsleds. And this was problematic for me because having grown up in South Arkansas, we not only didn't see bobsleds ever, we never saw snow. And so I just was a little nervous about this, and my only vision of a bobsled was on the opening scenes of Wide World of Sports, where the announcer would say, "The thrill of victory," as this ski jumper gracefully landed on the snow, And then he would follow that by the agony of defeat as a bobsled goes careening off the side of a mountain, probably decapitating everybody in the bobsled. So I'm pretty sure that I don't belong in one. And I go up to Mike afterwards and I said, "You're not serious about us getting in the bobsled?" He said, "Oh, don't worry. We're going to give you some training before you get in it." I got back to the hotel that night, got my laptop fired up, and Googled bobsleds. That was one of the dumbest things I've ever done. Because what I discovered was that a bobsled is gravity-driven. Now, some of you may remember when I was here before, I talked about my own personal health transformation. 5 years ago, there was 110 pounds more of me than you see today. So you'd have to remember, as I'm sitting there reading about the fact that bobsleds are gravity-driven, the one thing I'm pretty sure of, we are not going to get stuck on the side of the hill going down. And I read that bobsleds can go up to 93 miles an hour. Mike told me not to worry, that we weren't professionals. We couldn't go that fast. We probably wouldn't be able to get over 70. That was a real comfort at that point. The next day, we get out to Olympic Village, and I'm hoping that everybody chickens out, and then I can save face by not having to get on the bobsled. But all these guys are from states where they have snow and have seen bobsleds, and so they're all in. And I can't be the only wuss among them, so I go ahead and say, "Oh yeah, put me in a bobsled." I'm terrified. It gets worse. The training consists of introducing me to a 16-year-old junior Olympic athlete. No offense, but I don't want to learn how to drive anything from a 16-year-old kid. And the bobsled training is essentially putting spikes on your boots and starting at the bottom of the bobsled track and walking up what is a 1-mile track of solid ice from the bottom to the top. And along the way, the kid is describing the nuances of each of the 13 curves in the bobsled track. And he gets to number 12, and he says, "This is number 12. And when we get to this one, you need to have the skids like here, because if you get them way up here, we could like go off. And that's not good. And if the skids get way down here in the bottom, then we'll like bounce back and hit the wall back and forth, and that'll hurt. And then we get to number 11 and number 10, and he tells me where the skids need to go. And I'm trying to remember all of the things about where the skids go and which curve. And by the time we get to the top, I'm hyperventilating. And part of it, I'm exhausted. And the other part is, now I'm terrified. And I'm pretty sure that that night, all of you will hear about me on CNN as they say, "And the governor of Arkansas killed today in Salt Lake City." When that idiot tried to drive a bobsled. I'm sure that's going to be my national splash as they're in Olympic Village. We get to the top and they ask me, "Are you ready?" And I said, "What, to meet Jesus? What am I ready for?" They squeeze me down on the bobsled. The kid's job, he's the brakeman, which makes no sense because there are no brakes on a bobsled. His real job is to push us off, jump in behind, and hopefully pray real hard as we go down the track. Just before we went down, the kid gave me a piece of advice. Turned out it was the best training that I could have had. And here's what he told me. He said, "Now, when we push off from the top, we're going to start picking up an amazing velocity, and it's going to happen awfully quick." He said, "As soon as we crest that first hill, you'll see the first curve." He said, "Start steering for it as soon as you see it. And by the time you've reacted to it, you'll be in the middle of it." And he said, "Don't worry about if you've made a mistake. Forget the ice behind us. It can't hurt us. We're through it. And don't try to correct anything once we're inside the curve, because inside the curve, centrifugal force is in total control, and there's nothing you can do inside that curve except mess up." He said, "The only thing you really need to do," and he said, "if you do this, we'll be fine." He said, "Just simply, as soon as you see the curve, steer for it, and you'll be in it. And by the time you're in it and reacted to it, you'll see the next one, and steer for it as soon as you see it. And then steer for the next one." He said, "It's just real simple. Steer for the curve ahead, and we'll be fine." And that 16-year-old kid did not realize it, but he had not just given me great advice for driving a bobsled, which obviously the fact that I'm here indicates that we made it. By the way, we came in second, only to Levitt, who I'm pretty sure cheated because he was the host governor. But not only did he give me a great piece of advice about driving a bobsled, but more importantly, I realized he had just given me a great piece of advice about being a husband or a father, or running a business, or for that matter, running a state. Steer for the curve ahead. Forget what's behind you. Can't fix it now. That crisis you're in now, chances are the forces that are about you make it impossible to fix everything. But there's still time to steer for the curve ahead.